All right, guys, we're back. It's Church Debater and Preacher Mike. Mike, what's going on the day after Christmas 2021?
Well, interestingly enough, it's still Christmas to me because our daughter just is getting in tonight. So we had all of our Christmas tonight. So I'm getting excited to go. We're recording this on a Sunday night, and I'm getting excited to go home, and I'm in charge of stockings. So
okay,
I have all these great things I can't wait to do.
I'm weird, and I love.
Yes, you are.
Christmas. Yes, I am. For a specific reason this time.
Okay.
I love Christmas music leading up to the holidays. I can't wait until the day after Thanksgiving to start listening to that music. I don't want it to happen before that. I like shopping. Of course, with me, it's all online. But the day after Christmas, I want Christmas to be over. I'm ready to move on to other things. I can't even hardly eat the leftover food that we had on Christmas. It's that bad. I just want to move on and get it out of the way.
Well, I like to move on, but I don't want to get started that early. If Christmas were only 2 weeks, I would love it.
All right.
But I'm so tired of it that I'm ready for it to be over.
I'd tell everybody about the email we got this week from a group called Calvary Connect.
Yeah.
They asked us to join their podcast network. And I know, I think James Dobson partially sponsored it. He's not the guy that runs it, but that's kind of cool. We should pick up some more listens, and maybe we'll find some that we can recommend to our listeners. So I think that's pretty cool. It shows that some people are noticing us.
That really is cool. I appreciate that. It's
all
right. Because of you,
No, yes, you're the star.
Listen, the people.
You're the star. You tell me that every week.
The people need to know that Greg is responsible. He is the perfect host or antagonist for the show. Absolutely perfect.
I should tell you this story. I asked the high school students last week in class. I said, all right, I got it was actually a middle school superlative, the 8th grade. I was voted for a certain thing, how they always vote.
Yeah, right.
And I said, what do you think I got? And without hesitation, several of them said, you had to be the class clown.
Oh.
So I wasn't really that outgoing when I was in school until maybe junior or senior year, but I thought that was kind of funny. All right. This is going to be kind of an ad lib thing.
Oh.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you you don't have to quote the scriptures, but I'm going to ask you to give me some favorite scriptures on a subject that I'll mention here in just a moment.
Nice.
You can pick out whichever ones you want.
All right.
Based on the ones you want and what those scriptures say, that's how I'll base my next questions. Okay.
Nice.
All right. So we just finished a season in which giving is probably at its highest of any other part of the year for everybody, not just Christians, but for everybody. It's a giving type of season. So what I want you to tell me, give me a couple of scriptures that are your favorites about giving to each other, not giving to the church, but giving to each other. What's some of your favorites?
Obviously, one of my favorites is the book of Acts. It is more blessed to give than to receive. It's not only is that a favorite because of what it says, the blessing comes from the giving, not the gift. And that's what's really cool. But it's also the only words in the New Testament after the Gospel of John that are quoted directly from Jesus.
Okay, that's interesting. Good trivia.
Well, yeah. And so I like that. And that concept of giving, I think, is outstanding. I love the concept of giving in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, when Paul said to the Macedonian people who were wanting to give to the famine relief that was happening during their time in Judea. And he said, you gave beyond your ability because you first gave yourselves to the Lord. He was talking to people who gave and didn't even have anything to give.
Okay.
And yet the reason they could do it was because they gave themselves to the Lord. Those are my two favorites.
Okay. Well, that is actually exactly what y'all wanted you to say. So then does that form of giving really not indicate that it has to be financial in nature?
Oh,
Is it
absolutely.
just giving of ourselves as opposed to giving money?
You are exactly right. And I'll tell you why I think you are right. We talk about giving because we think of it mostly in the terms of money. But what we should think about giving, we should think about giving as a sacrifice of something that we treasure. Now,
Okay.
that's what giving is. And certainly money fits the category. But one of the things we treasure the most is time.
Right.
Time is so finite. You don't have but so much. You can't go buy more time. And so when you give of your time, that could be one of the greatest gifts that you could give. And our talents. We were talking, Austin and I were talking tonight in our dual teamwork sermon. We talked about the idea that if you have a talent that God has given you and you only use it for yourself and your family, but not for the Lord, then it, according to Titus 2, you are pilfering from the Lord. You are stealing, as it were. And so we have money, but we also have time and talents or abilities. And all of that is called giving.
Okay, good. With that in mind, then give me some examples of how a Christian can give incorrectly.
Well, one of the passages about giving is where God says that he loves a cheerful giver.
Right.
We probably all know stories of when we remember the good old days when we used to pass around a collection plate. You remember those days? Way back before COVID. And the plate would come by and a child has been given a quarter from parents to put in the plate. And I have seen parents shake the hand to try to get that quarter out of their hands because they don't want to let go of it. Well, that's what God's saying. I don't want you to give grudgingly or out of necessity. He said, I love a cheerful giver. So one way to do that is to give only because it's necessary. Well, certainly giving is necessary, but to give only because I'm forced to is a way to do it inappropriately. And I think that would be one of the main reasons.
Let me introduce another one.
Sure.
You can be a cheerful giver, but what if you get upset that the person you're giving to, you felt like didn't appreciate your gift?
Yeah.
Do we see that?
Oh, we see it all the time, all the time. But that goes back to the concept of what giving is. Giving is about me doing what I want to do. It's not about the other person. So if I get my joy only from the fact that I gave and it was recognized, appreciated, and thanked, then I've really missed it, because I can give and not ever know any appreciation back. Somebody walked up to me 2 or 3 months ago and handed me a $100 bill and said, I know this particular situation, and I want you to make sure this $100 bill gets to that person, but don't you dare tell them who it was.
Okay.
He never heard back. He never was able to. The point was the giving itself was what he appreciated and where he gained satisfaction.
That is selfless as opposed to selfish.
Very good. Selfless.
Okay.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So, all right. With that in mind, then you're saying everything I want you to say so far, because it's leading me to the next questions.
Very good.
And I have shared this with you. I can't remember if I shared it with you on the show or if I just shared it with you in person. I get uncomfortable when either during announcements or whatever, people get up and praise the church about how much they've given.
Yeah.
For the very reasons you just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
We shouldn't need the pats on the back. That's what we're supposed to do as a Christian. How do you feel about that?
I think that there is a bit of a difference to this degree. Paul said, I will not boast in anything except in the cross of Christ. That's all I'm going to boast about. When the church receives the glory through something, when God gets the glory through the church, it is a positive thing. When I get glory, that's a negative thing potentially. So I'm not as nervous about that, or as dislike it a little less maybe than you do, simply because I view it as a way of saying, as a church, this is the glory that we're giving to God. When it comes across as a bragging thing, look at what we're doing. You know, we're about to build this new facility. And if we brag about, look what we're able to do, look how much money we have, look, that's not at all. But if we say, look what we're going to do for the glory of God, that's a different spin. So what you're saying, I think, gives us reason to be cautious. When we talk about how much or the gift, make sure it's done in a way that glorifies God, not that glorifies ourselves. So I can appreciate that concern that we should have. That's exactly right.
Would it be wrong if the numbers we shared about how much food we were able to buy and all that kind of stuff, if we not only shared it within our membership, but shared it in the local newspaper?
You know, I would be less comfortable doing that than I would be doing what we do, because I don't want it out there that way. Now, I don't have a problem with using the local newspaper, for instance, as part of a public relations thing, just to advertise, to say, here we are, here's what we're a part of, will you come join us, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But the details of that would look less arrogant,
yes,
before our people than they would before the common people. Yeah.
All right. Let me ask you a couple of stories that will hit home a little bit.
Okay.
Kim and I own a timeshare. We are going to use it next year with our best friends in St. Louis to go travel.
Yeah.
And the facilities we're at, it's like a 2-bedroom unit. One bedroom is both the bedrooms are extremely nice.
Yes.
But one of them also has a jacuzzi hot tub, a fancier shower,
right,
a king size bed,
right,
a bigger TV, and more room in the bathroom. So am I not being a good Christian if I don't give them the better bedroom? Is it okay for me to say, I use my vacation membership to schedule this, so I should get the larger bedroom? Am I not being a proper Christian in doing that?
If it were me,
let me give something that maybe more people can relate to. Let's say you won 4 airplane tickets for a trip to Florida. Okay. You thought of your 2 best friends to go with you. So obviously that leaves me out, but 2 are in first class,
right,
2 are in coach. Would I be a sinful Christian for keeping the first class seats for myself?
I have 2 or 3 responses. One,
I thought you might.
It would be unchristian of you not to give the bigger bedroom. If it were me going on the trip, then it would certainly be unchristian. I should get the bigger bedroom. Number 2, when the plane ticket thing, here's what I would do. I would make sure that the 2 wives got the better seats.
Oh, you're skirting the issue.
Then it helps.
I'm not going to let you off that easy. I'm not going to let you off that easy.
Here's the deal.
All right.
I think that it would be a great show to say, I want you to have what we would consider the better. Remember Jesus, he said, when you go to this wedding feast and you walk in and you say, I'm going to sit at the best seats, somebody comes along and says, oh, by the way, you're in the wrong seat and they move you to the lower one. He said, wouldn't you rather sit at the lower one and be asked to move to the higher one?
No doubt about that.
So, yes, I would offer the lower or the higher to the other person and them say, oh no, you deserve it because you want it.
All
That's
right.
far better.
It's interesting. I post on some Facebook groups about this vacation area.
Mhm.
I posed that question to them,
Ah,
and they it was probably 95% said no. It's your vacation membership. You get the best bedroom. There was only a couple. Some of them even said that about their own family.
wow.
It really kind of surprised me. But
I
anyway,
might say it about, I might be willing to tell my family. In fact, I would, if when I've taken our kids on one of those, because we have a resort thing as well. When I've
right.
taken them, Becca and I get the better because ours. I would do it to family, say I'm going to get the better
Quicker than you
before
would
I
do it
would.
to
There you go, to somebody.
gotcha. I can see that.
Yep,
I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say what we'll actually do is maybe treat it like a split stay and just swap halfway through the week.
Why,
We thought
sure.
about doing that too.
Why, sure.
All right. So we've established that giving to others can be of self, not just financially. All right. So let's switch this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Give me your favorite couple of verses about our requirement that we need to give to the church, the work of the church. What's your couple of best verses for giving to the work of the church?
Well, the number one that pops to mind is 1 Corinthians 16, because again, they were involved in this scenario where there was a famine and the churches banded together to help their brethren in another place. And so Paul said, on the first day of the week, when you come together, you need to set something aside so that there aren't any special gatherings when I come. That was their work. That was the work of that church. And therefore,
was that financial or was that food?
I think it was both. I think it was both, but more likely financial, because it would be hard to carry food from where they were all the way down to Judea. So it's probably likely money.
Or maybe tents or something like that.
It could be, sure. It could have been all that. It would be today is the point. But I think there's another one example too in Acts chapter 6, when there was a problem with the Jewish women and the Greek women getting along, the cultures, the Jewish culture and the Greek culture in the same church, thinking that the Greek widows were going to be overlooked in what was called the daily distribution. There were widow women who were being cared for by the church. And so they wanted to make sure that whether you were Jewish or Gentile, didn't matter. You still are a Christian woman in need as a widow, and therefore we're going to take care of you. And they appointed 7 men to do that. Well, that's a part of the work of that church. Well, how are they going to do that without the money? So I think it's implicitly there that the people not only appointed the men to do the work, but provided the financial means for that work to be done. Those are my two favorites.
You probably know where I'm going with this. Does our giving, just like our giving to each other, does our giving to the church have to be financial? Let me give you an example. Let's say that I purpose in my heart that Greg Collins needs to give $100 a week. Let's say that's my amount.
Sure.
Let's say that I have some kind of special ability that when I charge people for it, I charge $100.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I decide to use that ability for the church.
Mm-hmm.
So am I now giving, quote, $100 to the church? Is it the same? Since I'm giving of my talents to do something for this church, is that good enough? Or do I have to write out a check for $100?
I think that is an outstanding question, because it is based on reality. Those kinds of things happen all the time. There are people who get paid to do certain things that they just do for the church, and that's perfectly fine. So it's a great question.
You know, I'll even say it stronger than that. If you have that ability and you don't do it for the church, I think there might be a problem.
Well, Austin and I, in our dual preaching tonight, that was our discussion. We talked about,
Okay.
and we talked about, in fact, I used the word pilfering because in the text of Titus chapter 2 and verse 9 or 10, he talks about that very idea that you're pilfering from the Lord, holding something back for yourself. If you have a talent and you use it to make money for yourself, but you hold it back from the Lord, you're stealing from him. You're pilfering from him.
Right.
So that does happen all the time. My response would be, I don't think it's an either or proposition. I think it's a both and. And here's why.
And you're going to tell us that from a scriptural standpoint.
I'm going to tell you that from I would say from an implicitly scriptural standpoint for this reason. If I am a person who is giving to the Lord and taking advantage of, if I'm giving to the church and taking advantage of all the church offers and being involved with, then I need to support every part of that. So if I am giving my talent, then I'm supporting the work that the church is doing. But if I'm also taking advantage of the facility and using it from time to time, being there from time to time, I think financially I should help pay for it.
Okay.
So I think it's a both and proposition when he said to give. I think that may be why he was so generic in his words about giving. It doesn't often say money. It just says give. If he had said specifically money every time, then people might have some reason to say, well, he didn't say I have to give my talents. Didn't say I have to give my time.
Right.
So I think that using the word give in a generic sense implies that I will give, and I'll give you 3 words you can hang on to: treasures, time, and talent. All 3 included in giving. I don't think it's either or. I think it's all both and.
That sounds like something you learned in preaching school.
It learned in the preaching constantly through the years. Yes, that's what I came up with in order to remember the sermon that I was going to preach.
All right. Well, let me give you this crazy thought to close with. Given with what you just said,
Yeah.
Let's say that I have a super duper talent. Nobody else knows how to do it. It's only me.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that knows how to do it.
Yep.
All right. I've got my money tied up in other things. They might be selfish things. They might be a boat in the driveway, 4 cars, and a vacation membership. But because I have that special talent, and obviously this is sarcasm,
right?
Because I have that special talent that in the open market is actually worth a lot of money. People
right.
pay a lot of money for this.
Right.
Would I be okay giving my talent instead of my money in that case?
I think that I would be very cautious judging someone who makes their decisions. I don't get involved in that. My advice would be that we do all that we can, time, talent, and treasure. But if you as an individual decided, this is the way I give my treasures by this unique thing that the church now doesn't have to pay for, it's almost the same, because if it were being done and the money had to come out of the church to pay for it,
right?
But now you're doing it with your talent, it's almost the same thing.
Okay. I go along with that. I agree with that.
And I'm sure not going to judge an individual. I can tell you that. What they decide to do
works for me. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
I think too often we hang dollar amounts on giving, and like you said, forget to give of ourselves.
Yes.
And
yes,
I know there's people appreciate that more than money. I really think they do.
I do too.
If you go out of your way to do something for them, they appreciate that more than you giving them an Amazon gift card. You know what I mean?
Agree with that. I totally
But
agree.
anyway, all right. So close us out with a profound thought of the week.
My profound thought of the week is related to what we were talking about today all day long. We all live in a culture, and the stark contrast between the culture that exists outside of the Lord's people and the culture that exists inside is so starkly contrasted. We live in a culture, each of us lives in our own culture of time and talent, of who we are and who they are, younger, older, all that kind of stuff. And outside the Lord's people, there's constant bickering, fighting, rebellion, striving, trying to get one up and get my culture better than yours. But in the Lord's church, we take all of that diverse culture that we all represent and we put it together. And now we become counterculture by creating God's culture, Christ's culture in his church. Let's all work for that.
All right. Sounds good to me. All right, guys, that's it for us this week. We'll see you next week. Church debater and preacher Mike. If I can get my words out. Say goodbye, Mike.
Goodbye, Mike.
All right.
That was good stuff. I like that.
Hang on just a minute. We're still recording.
That's all right.
I've got an extra button.